Hi all, I have another very interesting game from the World Rapid Championship 2018 currently being played. Andrew Tang is playing with the white pieces. He is a really great gentleman and sport. I have played him many times at Lichess, and he often gives me a sporting chance with berserking me, even in hyper bullet time control, which is 30 seconds for each all your moves. Yeah, hyper bullet is even more extreme than bullet chess. He's the supreme master at such fast time controls, and even beat Leela once on such a very fast time control game. So anyway, he's white against Magnus Carlsen, so fantastic to see him in this World Rapid Championship. So d4, d5, he plays actually bishop f4, the early bishop f4, I believe the Mason system of the London system. So here e3, e6, knight f3, bishop d6. Now bishop g3 hasn't got such a great reputation. This wasn't played. For example, black castles and has a very nice position. Black's potentially playing for e5. Black's at least doing okay, or even slight advantage. It seems this is a really interesting move, knight bd2, encouraging black to take on f4. But players with black, generally they don't do this. b6 was played, which has the idea of trying to swap off this bishop to try and weaken white on these light squares. Pawns on dark squares and these corresponding light squares, try and soften them up a bit. On bishop takes, as an example, white can play like this and have a nice small edge. You have to note with this setup, by the way, c4 sometimes a threat, so c3 is important to play to give the bishop some breathing space. Okay, but white's fine there. So b6 for Magnus Carlsen, bishop d3, black castles, knight e5, c5. And now one of the perks of playing it like this is queen f3. The queen's getting into an attacking position. Queen c7. Yeah, so not queen e2. There could be c4. If we play queen e2 here, c4. Beware the bishop's trap. So queen f3, queen c7, c3, bishop a6. Now bishop takes, knight takes, white castles, queen b7, knight g4, so threatening to double black's pawns. That's parried. Knight takes, bishop takes, and now using the pin, knight c4, and potentially getting into that e5 square. So bishop e7, knight e5, but it's kicked here, and there's a hint black might have some pawn mobility in the center. So I'm not entirely sure how great this tactical demonstration was of that pin. Here we see queen d7 unpinning, so threatening d takes, knight moves, but now e5, and it looks as though black's going to get a pin. Bishop g3 was played. Actually, it is possible to not lose a piece with d takes here, because there's actually a target on a6 with queen a2, but this would be very unpleasant indeed. Backward pawn, it can be targeted, bishop g5 for example, horrible. So we have actually bishop g3, which keeps this pawn chain intact as far as possible. C takes, e4. The problem is black has central pawn mobility. Queen e2 hits the knight. The knight wants to centralize anyway. f3, f5. Bishop e5. This e5 outpost is immediately challenged. Bishop takes. Interesting is if trying to play f4. As an example, say a5, a4. This is just an example. Black ends up maybe taking, and then there's a horrible idea of d4 if d takes, which looks very unpleasant. And if f takes, again, this looks slightly unpleasant. The pawn mobility of black is being emphasized here. Black's in a good place there with an advantage. So that's just taken off. F takes, and now d takes, which does give rise to knight c4 to get a knight into e5, which seems to be a small concession from black, but black's got a nice knight as well on d5. a4, a5, rook a, e1, king h8. We have queen f2, rook f6, maybe the idea of doubling rooks and then venturing rook h6. Queen g3, rook a, f8, queen h4, queen e8, which hits this pawn, and it's a little bit tricky. Yeah, this pawn, because you can't play b3 because of the c3 pawn. It's a little bit tricky, that a4. We have rook a1, which gives rise to central pawn mobility, basically. These pawns are not really, they're kind of ready to roll here. An alternative, I mean, with the limited amount of time Andrew had, though, it's very difficult to see the tactics here, but it seems as though king h1, king g8 might be the best, for example, like this. And that black still has a big advantage here. But, you know, if here, then the idea is g4 to combine the nice idea of knight g6 with the loose rook on f8, for example, like this tactic. Would be nice to aim for in this time control. And if black can't play f takes, then say moving the queen back, what ends up undermining black's pawn chain is at least equal here, at least. So this is very interesting ideas here on this f1 with knight g6 to try and combine them tactically. But so rook a1 doesn't bode well confidence wise. I think I've read this quotation recently on Facebook. You know how they put those picture sort of quotations. I think one was by Magnus Carlsen. He said, you've got to be confident, because otherwise there'll be situations where you play overly passively or something, something to that effect. That's why you need confidence in chess, not to be timid at critical moments. So here, yeah, it does strike as a little bit timid. f4, we have central pawn mobility. Well, Magnus Carlsen has central pawn mobility. Knight g4, rook f5, and it seems as though white's been pushed back after rook h5, and now trying to push the knight back, but it can't really go back here. It goes forward, and unfortunately, Magnus has this idea which is really dangerous in Andrew Tang's time pressure. Rook takes, exchange sack. So the central pawn mobility, mega dangerous pawns. We have rook d1. This was the last chance for something like c4, which hits b6 if the knight moves. So knight b4, queen takes b6 should be an even position. So this would have been good shot, c4. If e3 here, queen f3, and if knight e7, then there's bang, rook takes e3 using that pinned f pawn, you know, like this, with an advantage. That'll be okay for white. Round up this pawn with an advantage. So c4 was a great shot, but missed. It was a great, you know, even this position is okay, but rook d1 doesn't help after f3. These pawns are so dangerous now. On g takes, there's e3, and this is horrible with ideas of both e2 and knight f4. If queen e2, knight f4, and a white's king gets mated, so that's really horrible. Let's have a look here. Queen g2, there's knight f4, and a knight e2 check there, for example. Or if queen g4, there's h5 here. It's just all horrible. It's just nasty. These mobile pawns smashing through. Yeah, form pawn there, kind of. So queen g3 was played, but now knight f4 threatens knight e2 check. We have rook d e1. Now here, knight check would be an accident because of rook takes e2. Yeah, with the pinned rook. Or is it actually? Yes, it is. Even with the check, which white can play this, for example, and be okay, more than okay. But Magnus plays the check first, and this makes all the difference. So now, if king h1, f takes g2, that's obviously winning the queen, and the point is the queen is protecting the rook. So this is a bit of a killer check. If here, then there's knight e2 check, and rook takes f takes, and that rook's pinned, and there's e1 here. So for example, like this. So this is really nasty. So queen f2 was played. F takes g2 though, and this is winning for black. This position, yeah, the rook's kind of trapped there. This is winning material. It had, but I think Andrew Tang actually lost on time, but it is a lost position. If queen takes, then black takes this with check, then takes here, absolutely winning. Nevertheless, a good learning experience for Andrew Tang. I think he's going to be one of the brightest stars in over the board rapids in the near future. He's shown extreme talent online, remarkable, winning online competitions with some big prizes ahead of Magnus Carlsen sometimes. A remarkable talent indeed. Great to see him in this tournament. Great for Magnus Carlsen to come back as well from his first 2 losses. I hope you enjoyed this game video. If you did, please click on the top left box, which should appear shortly, to become a member at chessworld.net. You can play against other YouTubers. You can also check the YouTube analysis in advance from the improved menu there. Learn from the Masters YouTube order button I set up. Comments, questions, relations, see the description. Like, share, subscribes with the notification bell, especially really appreciated. And check out the new Teespring store in the description as well. Okay, thanks very much.